The functionality of a Tenjin virtual assistant can be enhanced by the configuration of skills against that assistant. We're going to be looking at the QnA skill, the question and answer knowledge base skill. This skill, when configured, allows an administrator of Tenjin to come in and configure question and answer pairs so that when an end user types in a query in natural language into Tenjin Assistant, perhaps in the web chat channel or via Microsoft Teams, if there's a matching question in that knowledge base, that user then sees the answer to that question as a reply within that chat interface. So let's look at how that's configured. So here we have an environment. There's a single assistant has been configured. It's called Tenjin. Let's just click on that and have a look at how that's set up. Well, the name of the assistant is Tenjin. The web chat and the Microsoft Teams channels are both enabled. The flow functionality is disabled so that rather than initiating a flow, which may then in turn go to the QnA knowledge base to get an answer, when a user types in a query, it's going to go straight to the QnA knowledge base. So below we can see that the QnA skill has been added to this assistant. If you're configuring your virtual assistant and want to add the QnA skill and it's not here, you simply click on the Add Skill button and a list of available skills is shown. And you would see the QnA skill here with a corresponding Add Skill button. But it's already added, so we can just look at how it's configured. But before we do that, let's just have a look at how an end user might type in a query and what kind of answer they are given. So this skill has already been configured with 2 questions and answers. I know what they are, so let's just click on the Test Assistant button and type in a query and see what the user gets. So here we go. There's the question. So I'm going to put in what is Tenjin, because I happen to know that there is a question in the knowledge base that matches this question. So here we go. I'm a superpowered virtual assistant, easy to configure and use. Fantastic. So let's have a look at the QnA skill and how that question has been configured. So I'm going to return to the assistant, and now I'm going to click on View and look at the skill. So once the QnA skill has been added, it can then be configured with 1 or more knowledge bases. So here there's only 1 knowledge base that's been configured, but if necessary, additional knowledge bases can be created. And the reason for additional knowledge bases usually would be because a different knowledge base might have a different data source. So let's just look at what we've got configured here. So here we go. This is my first knowledge base and the questions that have been configured. And you can see at the top here that there is a question, what is Tenjin? And here's the answer, I'm a superpowered virtual assistant, easy to configure and use. Now, when you first create a knowledge base, it always creates a question by default, which is this, how do I add questions and answers question? So that's a question that will always appear, which you will then need to delete before going live with this knowledge base. So how do we add another question? Well, it's quite easy. We click on the Add button here, and I might type in what is a virtual assistant, and then we can type in an answer. So the answer might be a virtual assistant gives you the information you want right where you usually are getting your work done. So perhaps inside Microsoft Teams. You'll notice as well that there are a few options to format this. So I can, make virtual assistant bold and so on. And the text editor here uses the markdown syntax, which is why you can see the little asterisks here. But if you want to see how the end user sees it, click on preview and you see how it looks. So if I hit OK, there's our new question. And what we can also do, first of all, before we save our changes, let's delete that how do I add questions and answers question there. And then I click on Save Changes. And after a few moments, those changes are committed and we can go now to the assistant and type in that question and see how it looks. Here we go. Let's go back to the assistant. And again, we'll go to the Test Assistant option here. And I'm going to type in now, what is a virtual assistant. And I haven't even spelt it right, but the way in which Tenjin works is it uses its best ability to get the right matching question. So here we have the answer. A virtual assistant gives the information you want right where you usually are getting your work done. Great. So there we are. That's how to add a Q&A knowledge item in Tenjin. But we can go a bit further. When a user is asked that question and gets a reply, sometimes we want the user to be prompted with another question. So there may be a related question that the user might want to see the information about. So if I click on View and go into that knowledge base again, when a user types in what is Tenjin, maybe we want to prompt them with a what is a virtual assistant question to follow on. So what we're going to do is I'm going to edit this what is Tenjin question with the edit button over here, and we can specify the other question as a follow on question. And what does that mean? Well, we shall see. So what is Tenjin? I'm a superpowered virtual assistant, easy to configure and use. Well, we might want to prompt the user that there's also another question, what is a virtual assistant available? So if you look on the right here, there's this section called follow on prompts. And if I click on existing, it allows us to choose the other questions that have been configured in the knowledge base. What is a virtual assistant? If I hit OK, and then OK that again, and save those changes, now when I test that virtual assistant, the user is going to be prompted to ask the next question. So let's just wait a few more moments for that to complete, and now go back to test assistant. So let's type in what is Tenjin. There we go, I'm a superpowered virtual assistant. But you can see now, because we made the other question a follow-on question, a button has now appeared below the answer with the next question as a prompt. So the user can click that, which is a short way of typing in the whole sentence. And here we are, a virtual assistant gives the information you want right where you usually are getting your work done. This functionality really allows you to give your user not just the first piece of information that's matched in the knowledge base, but also prompt them to find out more about the topic that they're searching for information on. So the final thing we're going to look at really in the Q&A knowledge base here is how to configure topics. And a topic is a way in which you can configure categorizations within the knowledge base for different types of information. So for example, if we want to configure, let's say, a employee information assistant, there might be some information about expense claims. So in that case, let's click on add topic and give it a name, expense claims. Oops, spelled that wrong. And it's created us a new section with the default question, which of course we don't want. So let's click on delete, and I can add a new question here. Oops, how do I claim expenses? And we can put in the answer, you can claim the There we go. You can claim expenses using the Expense It tool on the company intranet. And then if we want to, we can actually create a link to the company intranet. So I don't know, let's call it. Here we go, there's a URL. So we can create a link for the user as well. And perhaps we want to make that Expense It tool bold. And hit OK. So there we are, we've created another question and answer. But something else we might want to consider, are there other ways of asking the same question that perhaps don't use the same phraseology? So we might want to create alternative phrasing for the question. So if we think about the question, how do I claim expenses? Well, perhaps somebody might say, how do I submit my expenses? Or how do I submit my receipts? So if I click on edit, over on the left here, you'll see there's the option to add alternative phrasing. So I could put in here, how do I submit my receipts? And then we hit OK. So now a user can ask either a question similar to either of these two questions and still get the same answer. A really good way of minimizing the amount of question and answer pairs that you need, and as users use the system, you can further improve the ways in which they get to the right answer. Let's click on Save Changes. And then once that's finished, we can just have a quick look in the assistant and see how that works. Okay, so let's go back to the Test Assistant option and claim receipts. You can claim expenses using the expense tool on the company, and how do I submit expenses? We get the same answer. One final thing probably to say about the QnA knowledge base, there are a few other options. When you have a knowledge base, if you want to, rather than creating the question and answer pairs, there is the option to import. So if I click on this import option here, but we can point a knowledge base at a website page or bring in a file document. And when you do that, it will do its best to extract question and answer pairs from that data source. And finally, if you need to, you can also back up the entire knowledge base to a file, and it downloads a text document which you can then import later on. So you do have the ability to do local backups of your knowledge bases and then restore them through this option here as well. So there we go, that's Tenjin QnA knowledge base skill and how you can configure it.